welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo. Let's talk about the 5 cards that I've seen win the most Commander games. And of course, I will be talking about those 5 individual cards. Likely a lot of people clicked on this video to see which cards I am referring to. Of course, it's always subjective. A lot of people will ask for empirical evidence for why I think these cards win the most games. It's just what I've seen. I've been playing this format for 10 years now. These 5 cards are the ones that have been, let's say, the cause of winning someone the game. I mean, you can point to a card like, say, a Felidar Sovereign, which actually says you win the game, but most cards that win you the game aren't actually doing that. They're doing something else that maybe immediately wins you the game or very quickly thereafter wins you the game, right? So again, this is all subjective, just my personal opinion, obviously. Everything in this format is personal opinion, right, guys? Now, why am I talking about this right now? Well, because I was thinking about that game changers list that everyone has been talking about. I'm not going to touch on the brackets at all here. I actually dislike the brackets less than I dislike the Game Changers list. Really, my biggest issue is with the Game Changers list. I realize it's a beta, but of course, that's why I'm making this video. They want our feedback, guys. They're asking for it, so I'm giving it to them. All the people that have zero issue with this and are already downvoting this video because I dare say anything bad about the brackets or the Game Changers list, you don't want to hear any other side of an opinion? You just want to give this a thumbs up and we're going to move on using it? You don't want to hear any other expertise opinion on this subject? I've heard a bunch of people already talking about cards that should be on this list, and I think we should be discussing this issue. Whether or not you are going to be using this going forward, which I am not, I'm still going to give my opinion on it though, because I have a lot to say on this matter. There's already been a bunch of people pointing out really obvious misses on this list. I'll just list off a bunch of cards I've already heard other people talk about that should be a game changer. Necropotence, Pact of Negation, Farewell, Field of the Dead, Atali, Primal Conqueror, Mishra's Workshop, Last March of the Ents, Mana Drain, Korvold, Esper Sentinel, Eerie Ultimatum, Azusa Lost But Seeking, Humility, Constant Mists, Worldly Tutor, Ruinous Ultimatum, The Great Henge, and Open the Way, and of course, Soul Ring. That is always going to be involved in the discussion of game changers going forward. Remember, guys, even if you are in a bracket 1 deck, someone can still play a turn 1 Soul Ring into Arcane Signet in that super casual game, and no one should be able to complain about it because, of course, Soul Ring is this card that is immune to the bracket system or the game changers list. I think that's silly. Obviously, any criteria you could have for adding a card to the Game Changers list will apply to Soul Ring. I get the arguments. Actually, you know what? I don't get the arguments of it's like this iconic card of the format that we need in the format or else people won't play it. I don't know. Whatever that argument is, I think it's kind of silly. It fits into every single possible description you could have for a Game Changer card. There is like probably no card in the entire format that changes the game more on turn 1 than does a Soul Ring. We'll get past that though. There's actually a bunch of cards on this list, funny enough, that I don't think should be on there. For example, Jeska's Will and Underworld Breach, both the only red cards, in fact, that are on this list. I think you could easily not put on the list. I've seen an Underworld Breach in a ton of casual Commander games, and it never does anything busted or ridiculous. It can, yes, of course. The potential for these cards is always going to be a thing. I mean, the potential for Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood is they go infinite and win the game. So the potential is always going to be there. For Jeska's Will and Underworld Breach, I think the potential, the possibilities are really high, but most of the time, they're played very fairly from what I've seen. Yes, I'm sure you can go infinite with an Underworld Breach in your CEDH deck, but we're not playing CEDH here. We're talking about casual Commander, and in every casual Commander game I have ever seen a Jeska's Will and Underworld Breach, they've just been pretty good. That's it. My other big issue here, other than the cards that are lacking, of course, is the abundance of cards that are like strictly CEDH only, like Trinisphere. I've never seen that in a casual Commander game. Mox Diamond is another one. Yeah, it's expensive and it's seen as a powerful card, right? The sort of aura that surrounds these cards, it sort of pushes them onto this Game Changers list, which I don't like at all. If I'm playing my Unicorn Tribal deck and I play Mox Diamond turn 1, who cares, right? What's it going to do? Oh no, I'm going to get my 3-drop Unicorn out on turn 2 instead of turn 3. Woohoo, right? What you're doing with those cards matters so much. A Mox Diamond is not that impactful in most casual Commander games, and a Lion's Eye Diamond is in fact really bad in most casual Commander games. It's making you discard your hand. That's terrible. That's actually the perfect example of a card that is really, really good in very specific scenarios and actually downright bad in most other scenarios. If you offered up someone a Lion's Eye Diamond to put in any of their casual Commander decks, most people would say, no thanks. I don't really want to discard my hand. So this list really doesn't make sense to me. It's sort of a weird combination of strictly CEDH cards and then also cards that people just don't really like in a casual Commander game, more than an actual game changer, which is what the list is supposed to be. And of course, the 5 cards I will be talking about are absolutely game changers. They are the cards that I have seen win the most Commander games, pretty much all on their own. Let's start with number 5, which is Aetherflux Reservoir. 4 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. And I will just say that ability on its own is really, really powerful, right? Of course, it is a colorless storm option, essentially. It is a card you can put in any color of deck that is doing kind of the storm off thing. Because, of course, it's just going to end up gaining you a bunch of life. Typically, it is used in the Commander format for this second ability, which is really one of the unfunnest things I think they've ever put on a card, in my personal opinion. Pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to any target, which of course in the Commander format essentially is target player just loses the game, right? This is just, I decide to kick a certain player out of the game. We're all playing, there's 4 of us here, and likely I won't be able to activate this, and most of the times I've seen this card played, the person is not able to activate it more than once, so they just pick the guy they don't really like and they kick him out of the game. That's essentially what this card does most of the time I've seen it played, which is sort of that unfun scenario that they're not wanting in a casual Commander game. Who wants that to happen in a bracket 1 or bracket 2 game? Probably not a lot of people. Target player gets kicked out of the game. That's essentially what this card usually is doing. I mean, it can do a lot of other things. What matters is what it is typically going to be doing in a casual Commander game, and what Aetherflux Reservoir typically does in a casual Commander game is target player gets kicked out of the game. That doesn't seem very fun. So for that reason, I guess it kind of doesn't fit on this list, because more than just a card that's winning the game, it's causing a player to lose the game. But of course, I'm talking about this list more as cards that I think should appear on the Game Changers list, because a card like this in a bracket 1 game to me doesn't seem like a lot of fun. Number 4, this was an easy one, Mana Geyser. 3 red sorcery. Add a red for each tap land your opponent's control. And when I saw Jeska's Will on the Game Changers list, I'm thinking, I have never seen a Jeska's Will close out a game or even come close to closing out a game, actually. And in fact, funny enough, right around the time that list came out, I played a game against one of my patrons who has a Kess deck, and it's their most powerful deck. And not only did they cast Jeska's Will once, they cast it twice because they cast it from their graveyard as well. They had a bunch of mana, they exiled the top cards of their library, and they just did some stuff, and then they passed turn. That was it. I think 4 out of the 6 cards they exiled from the top of their library were lands. Again, I say all the time, Impulse Draw, I don't find to be very good at all. It's completely random, and you have to play those cards right away. They didn't even end up using all the red mana that they were getting. I have never seen a Jeska's Will blow a game open. I don't even know what people are talking about when they talk about that card and how powerful it is. I have never understood it. It gives you some mana and it gives you Impulse Draw, and only gives you both if your commander is out. I have very often seen people cast a Jeska's Will just as a ritual, which is no big deal, unless that ritual is a Mana Geyser. How is this not way more of an impactful card in a Commander game than a Jeska's Will? I will often see this add 30 mana. As far as the closing out game scenario, I've seen this end so many games. A guy casts a Mana Geyser and just closes out the game. This isn't actually winning the game, but it is certainly one of those cards that I have seen people cast, and then very soon after that, the game is over and they win. But also, this is a card that I can cast on turn 5 and get like 20 mana. So not only is it going to help me win the game, but it is also a card that can very much accelerate me to a massive advantage in the middle of the game. So it's covering both of those scenarios. This really is one of the most impactful cards in the entire format. Way more impactful than a Jeska's Will, in my opinion. I can't believe it's not on that list. Next up, Grey Merchant of Asphodel. I don't know why this card is so often overlooked. Again, I talk about Primeval Titan, and people are always like, oh, you're going to be cloning it and blinking it, and everyone else is going to be trying to steal it and clone it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just thinking, apply all of that to Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Instead of just getting a couple of lands into play, I'm gaining 100 life or just straight up winning the game. This is Without a doubt, and again, these top few here are very much the cards that not only have I won a ton of games with, but I've seen so many people win games with as well. We all have. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by this selection. I used to have a Rona deck, which was a Dimir blinking deck essentially, and very quickly I came to just always get my Gary and then just start blinking that because it was really the easiest way to win any game. That deck essentially became blink or make token copies of my Gary just to win. I won every game with that deck with my Gray Merchant of Asphodel, so much to the point where I kind of got bored with the deck and took it apart. So I myself have won a ton of games with this card. And in fact, of all the cards on this list, this is the one that I myself have used the most. But of course, I've seen a ton of other people do it. We all have, guys. How many decks have closed out games with this card? Or again, just like the Mana Geyser, for only 5 mana, you are completely swinging the game in your direction. How many times have we seen that? How many times have we seen the guy with like 5 life left? He's almost done. Here comes Gray Merchant, and he just gained 50 life. Now he's back in the game, and he's so far off from dying. It's a huge game swinging card. Absolutely massive. Shocking that this is not a game changer. Maybe it will be in the future. We will see, right? And again, another issue I have with the game changers list, I think it will be changing all the time. Frequently, maybe on a biannual basis, something like that. I think they might get into the situation where maybe 2 or 3 times a year, they have a certain date where they decide to either add or take things off the game changers list. Likely they won't be taking things off. They'll only be adding, so that list will keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Of course, new cards are coming out all the time, so they will have to be adding cards to that list, without a doubt. So without a doubt, that list will constantly be changing. My second card that has won the most games that I've seen anyway is Craterhoof Behemoth. I don't think anyone's surprised by this. This would have been number 1 on my list about 5-6 years ago. Again, Aetherflux Reservoir also would have been a lot higher on my list 5-6 years ago. When I first started playing the Commander format, those were the 2 cards that I lost games to the most. If I just picked one card that I lost the most amount of Commander games to, it would have been Aetherflux Reservoir number 2 and Craterhoof Behemoth number 1. Most people will look at this and go, yeah, me too. I fit into that category. How many of you guys fit into the category of you lost more games to Craterhoof Behemoth than any other one singular card? I certainly have. I haven't actually lost a game to this card probably in a couple of years because I don't really know if any of my patrons play it and I mostly play against them. Still though, it was so far ahead of every other card that I've lost to that it is still hanging out on the number 2 spot. I mean, obviously it became a Commander staple for that reason, right? This is one of the most popular sort of win cons in the entire format. As we all know, it's been reprinted a dozen times and it's still like a $30 card because everybody wants to put it in all of their green decks. Talk about an impactful card. This thing closes out games so easily. How is it not a game changer? The card that I think has won a person the most Commander games, though, is Teferi's Protection. And I know it's not winning you the game. And in fact, it's doing the exact opposite. It's just preventing you from winning the game, but it's doing so much more than that. I can honestly say that this is the card, especially in recent times, that has caused people to win a casual Commander game the most that I have ever seen in my 10 years playing this format. If you haven't seen it before by some chance, 2 and a white instant until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. And the story of this card is actually really, really funny, and I think it is integral to this whole discussion here. The reason this card was printed, of course, originally in C17 is because it was supposed to be an answer to Cyclonic Rift, the card that everyone hated so much. And of course, when Teferi's Protection came out, everyone celebrated it for that reason. They were celebrating the fact that, hey, we finally have an answer to Cyclonic Rift. Someone cast their overloaded Cyclonic Rift at instant speed. I can Teferi's Protection phase all my stuff out, and I don't have to bounce anything to my hand. And in fact, phasing was even brought back with this card. We hadn't seen any phasing cards in forever, but they decided to bring it back with Teferi's Protection because it was one of the few things that actually worked against a card like Cyclonic Rift. But of course, this card's doing so much more, right? Until your next turn, first of all, so of course, nobody can really do anything to you except for a few fringe scenarios until you untap on your next turn, because of course, that's when you phase in. And when you untap, of course, now you got all your creatures, now you got all your lands untapped, so you can likely react to a lot of things, even if your opponents had an answer. Of course, your life total can't change, so that affects a whole lot of things. Not only does it affect damage, but it also affects loss of life. It also affects any exchange exchange life thing or repay in kind that changes your life total to a certain thing. That doesn't work here either because, of course, your life total can't change. It isn't just preventing damage to yourself, it's doing so much more. And then on top of that, you gain protection from everything, which does indeed cover a whole lot. It is hands down, in my opinion, one of the most powerful cards in the entire format. I'm actually kind of sick of seeing it in games. I took it out of all my own decks for that reason. Again, this format is all about self-regulation. I took Dockside Extortionist out of all my decks before it was even banned because I knew it was a problem card. And I have taken Teferi's Protection out of all my decks as well for the same reason. I can't count the amount of times, again, this is why it's at number one, that someone casts a Farewell or some big sweeping board wipe effect, but he casts his Teferi's Protection, he gets to keep everything, and everyone else gets their stuff destroyed, so he untaps on his turn and just wrecks everybody. Again, maybe he doesn't win right away, but he's going to end up winning eventually because he has such a huge advantage. It's kind of ironic that is almost the inverse of a Cyclonic Rift. This card was printed as an answer to Cyclonic Rift, and it in itself has become the same thing. That's what everyone hates about Cyclonic Rift, right, guys? That guy gets to keep all his stuff and everyone else's is gone. Teferi's Protection does the exact same thing in so many different scenarios where that one individual gets to keep everything, or that one individual gets to keep their life total. The Exsanguinate has no effect on them, right? It is such a massive advantage in so many different scenarios. And on top of that, it gives the guy who's already way ahead a massive advantage. I have a patron who very often casts Teferi's Protection on their turn. They don't even wait to react to anything. They have a giant board. They know they can probably win, so they'll just cast Teferi's Protection, phase all their stuff out, and the rest of us are just sitting there going, I guess we're screwed because any board wipe we cast will do nothing, attacking them will do nothing, so we just have to sit here doing nothing and let them untap on their turn and win the game. This card has won more games than I have seen any other card win a game, and it should absolutely be on that Game Changers list. And before I go, I will point out one more important thing about this Game Changers list, which is it is not going to be just a guideline going forward. All you guys that are like, what's the big deal? These are just guidelines for finding games. Sorry, they have already started talking about how they're going to be unbanning cards. And of course, when they unban those cards, they're going to go on the Game Changers list. Again, if you've been playing the Commander format for more than a year, you should probably already know that is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to start unbanning cards. We know they are. And those cards are going to go on the Game Changers list. So that means this Game Changers list is no longer just a guideline. It is sort of a soft ban list for the Commander format. It is cards that certain people are going to be able to play in certain brackets. And more importantly, what are you going to do if you're not using this bracket system Game Changer thing, right? Something that I've had to talk about with my patrons on my Discord. We're going to have some serious discussions about it going forward. What happens if you're not using this system and then Wizards of the Coast starts unbanning cards? Then what do, right? Oh, well, just unban Prophet of Crucifix or unban Primeval Titan, and they will be Game Changers. What is going to be your course of action if that happens? Just food for thought here. That's it. That's all I'm doing here with this video. I'm talking about these cards that have won the most casual Commander games that I've seen, but I'm making a point about the Game Changers list and everything going forward and how, I think a lot of people out there are just accepting this whole system because they're just not happy when they show up to their LGS every week. And because they're so desperate for a solution, they're not actually thinking through all of the issues there are here, and they're trying to dunk on me because how dare I have any criticisms about this system? It's a beta system, guys. They're asking for criticisms, and I'm pointing out errors that they might be having here. A lot of people are. We should be doing that. And all of you guys that are blindly accepting this, you're not helping at all because you're not helping this system get better. If you like the system so much, you should be criticizing it so that it becomes better. It has now become my biggest concern. Originally, it was the brackets that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but the Game Changers list is becoming my bigger concern now, and especially if they're going to start unbanning cards and adding them to the Game Changers list, which is what they, I think, absolutely will be doing. You guys let me know in the comments below what you think. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.